John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism. When a man regards a particular human action as a good or bad depending upon whether or not said human action brings happiness, then he subscribes to utilitarianism, popularly known as the greatest happiness principle. Utilitarianism holds that the happiness is the very yardstick of morality. Those actions that bring happiness are considered morally right, while those actions that inhibit happiness are considered morally wrong. As Mill states in his work Utilitarianism, the creed which accepts as the foundation of morals, utility, or the greatest happiness, holds that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, or wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. By happiness is intended pleasure and the absence of pain. By unhappiness, pain and the privation of pleasure. In these two sentences, an ethical theory holding that proper course of action is the one that maximizes the overall happiness by whatever means necessary. It is thus a form of consequentialism, meaning that the moral worth of an action is determined from this point of view. Actions are either inherently pleasurable or merely instrumental, as Leonardo de Castro in his book Ethics and Logic. Basic Concepts states things may be valued of their own sake or because they are instrumental in attaining an end. Since these things are valued for the sake of ends other than themselves, they are said to have instrumental value. On the other hand, happiness is not valued for something other than itself. It is valued for its own sake. In this sense, it is said to have inherent value. For example, Stuart Mill utilitarianism, for example. The internet has become a medium of entertainment and commercialism which aim mostly to gratify the senses. Many sites offer different products that please the eyes, ears, mouth, flesh, etc. Anything that makes people happy or satisfy the senses found in the internet. It is where one finds no boundaries in doing whatever he wants without thinking of rules to follow. For example, many are happy breaking rules on relationship, killing other people and consequering the nation, and stealing confidential and private information. Computing is utilized to gain happiness because it has the capability to bring pleasure without violating existing rules or set morals.
He is thus fitted to be a member in which possible realm of ends to which his own nature already destined him. For as end in himself, he is destined to be a legislative in the realm of ends. from all laws of nature and obedient those only which he himself gives. Or in short it is nothing less than the participation of course the rational being in giving universal laws. Ang isang bagay ay walang kabuluhan maliban sa ipinasya nito sa pamamagitan ng batas. Therefore, the legislation that determines all work must have dignity like unconditional and incomparable work. Only the word respect is a suitable expression for the esteem that a rational being must have for it. Or in short a thing has no worth other than that determined for it by the law. Sa makatuwid, ang batas na tumutukoy sa lahat ng karapat-dapat ay kailangan magkaroon ng dignidad tulad ng walang kondisyon at walang kapantay na kalagahan. Tanging ang salitang paggalang lamang ang angkop na pahayag para sa pagpapahalaga ng kailangang magkaroon ng pangatwiran para dito. The ways of presenting the principle of morality are fundamentally only formulas of the very same law, which unites the others, or autonomy now serves as the basis for the dignity of both human nature and every rational nature, or in Tagalog is autonomy ngayon ay nagsisilbing batayan para sa dignidad ng kalikasan ng tao at bawat makatwirang anyo.
So, good morning everyone. My name is Rico J.S. Paclibare, a member of Group 3, Team 3. So, my report is all about Immanuel Kant's categorical imperatives. So, first, who is Immanuel Kant? Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher and one of the central Enlightenment thinkers. Kant's comprehensive and systematic works in epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, and aesthetics have made him one of the most influential figures in modern Western philosophy. Kant's concept of what is good is totally contravenes Mill's utilitarianism, where Mill's theory of utilitarianism holds that happiness or pleasure, or the avoidance of pain, is the only thing that is innately good. Kant adheres to the philosophical beliefs that only goodwill can be considered good per se or without qualification. So, another difference between the two philosophies is the fact that the utilitarianism considered the result or consequences of a particular action in determining whether or not the said action is right or wrong. So, para kay Mill kasi, kino-consider niya yung result or the consequences para masabi niya na good ba yung ginawa niya or mali. Kay Kant naman, Kant on the other hand argues that an act is good not because of a certain consequences that occurs in each performance or the other basis of its end result, but because of the willing that accompanies the act. So, para kay Kant, yung tinatawag na good na action is hindi na binase dun sa magiging resulta, kung makakatulong ba, may makakasakit ba. So, yun ay para kay Kant, good is binibase niya sa willingness natin, sa kagustuhan na gawin yung isang action. So, yun. In his work, Foundation of the Metaphysics of Morals, Kant introduced his concept of what is good by saying that nothing in the world, indeed nothing even beyond the world, can possibly conceive which could be called good without qualification except in goodwill. So, masasabi lang natin na good yung isang action pag ginawa ito ng base sa kagustuhan. So, yun lang daw ang tanging qualification para masabi nating good ang isang bagay. To exemplify goodwill, Kant introduced the concept of duty. He enumerated 3 propositions of morality related to duty as follows. So first, to have moral worth, an action must be done out of duty. For example, Jake takes care of his computer because it is his duty to do as its owner. He does not think about why he should do so. He only wills the performance of his said duty. In this way, his action attains moral worth. So, inaalagaan lang ni Jake yung computer niya kasi Yun yung naka-mindset sa kanya is work niya yon or duty niya kasi computer niya yon. So, hindi niya iniisip yung ibang bagay na kaya kailangan niyang alagaan yun para mas magtagal sa kanya. Ganun sana. Kumbaga, wala yung love ngay na tinatawag dun sa natin. Second, an action done from duty does not have its moral worth in the purpose, which is to be achieved through it, but in the maxim by which is determined. This means that the purpose or end for which an action is done would be of no moment as far as attainment of moral worth or value is concerned. The worth of your action would depend not on any other conditions but on the principle of the will, regardless of its end that can be fulfilled through the performance of the said action. So next. So third, duty is the necessity of an action done from respect for the law. So meron tayong example dito. So Chito buys genuine and branded software not because he wills it, but because he is acting in compliance with the law against piracy. So, meron siyang respect sa law. So, kaya bumili siya ng genuine tsaka mga branded kasi yun yung mga registered. Kasi dun sa pag software kasi meron yung mga crack, unregistered, ganun, mga nakaw. So, against the law yun. Wala na yung tinatawag na respect for the law. Kahit gusto niyang bumili ng mga mas mura, pero yung iniisip niya dito is yung law, yung gusto ng law. Kant's philosophy went beyond the popular moral of the metaphysics of moral. He begins his piece as follows: everything in nature works according to laws. Only a rational being has the capacity of acting according to the conception of laws or according to principles. This capacity is will. Since reason is required for the derivation of action from laws, will is nothing else than practical reason. If reason infallible determines the will, the action which such as being recognized as objectively necessary are also subjectively necessary. That is, the will is a faculty of choosing only what which reasons, independently or inclination, recognizes a practically necessary as good. This means that being rational, human beings have the capability to act in accordance with the set of norms or principles laid down in the form of law. With the use of reason or rationality, human beings are able to discern and decide whether to obey certain sets of law. This formulation of a command of reason is called an imperative. So, as earlier stated, everything in nature works in consonance with the law, or a rational being that has the capacity to act in full accord with the notion of law and sound norms, and the will to do or not to do things. Imperative are asserted by the use of the article ought. This signals the incidental relationship of the law and will to one another. So, imperatives are either hypothetical or categorical. So, first dito tayo sa hypothetical. A hypothetical imperative commands an action that is meant to be good merely as means to do something else. It tells us that an action is good for some purpose. Here's an example of a hypothetical imperative. In computing, a user is advised to become familiar with the computer language, since the computer, although user-friendly, would operate only upon the user's command. A categorical imperative commands an action that is good in itself. It is asserted that an action or itself is objectively necessary without regard of any purpose or any end other than itself. So, sa categorical naman is an commands an action that is good for itself, para sa kanya lang. So, love one another. Love one another is an example of a categorical imperative. It is a command for the performance and action that is good in itself.
So, this is my report. It's all about Aristotle's Nicomachean ethics. Aristotle's Nicomachean ethics is teleological, which is the Greek root telos, means end, goal, or purpose. The goal of human life, which is Aristotle says that everyone agrees that the goal of human life is happiness. However, this is an unfortunately translation when the modern English speaker thinks of happiness. They think of the feeling of being happy, which is a sort of pleasure. A word Aristotle used is eudaimonia, which means something more like well-being or fulfillment than happiness. But what does happiness consist of? So, happiness, a person who lives a virtuous life will have a better chance at attaining happiness. The one who lives without virtue. So, this is the types of ends, which is all actions aimed toward an end. So there are two major kinds of ends. Instrumental ends, the instinct ends, which is the instrumental end, acts that are done as means for another end. Instrumental ends are also described as being ends of which we desire because they allow us to achieve another goal. They are ends that serve a purpose. For example, would be working as a cashier for the purpose of getting a paycheck. It is considered instrumental because you are working there for the sake of getting paid, not because being a cashier is something you love to do. Next is intrinsic ends, which we desire for their own sake. For example, taking philosophy class because you enjoy philosophy and you just want to know more about it for your own sake. You are not taking it just because it is a requirement for graduation, but because you genuinely want to know more about philosophy for your own well-being. Let's proceed for eudaimonia. So, what is eudaimonia? According to Aristotle, eudaimonia is the highest human good, the only human good that is desirable for its own sake, which is as an end in itself, rather than for the sake of something else, as a means towards some other end. Aristotle explicates that the doctors are target at health and shipbuilders ability targets at safe trip, but this kind of ends have further end or good in view. But there must be some end that is ultimate mean. Agree that is good is happiness. So, what is happiness? Aristotle lays out the view of classes embraced by Plato, which is that some are dominated by desire, some by spiritedness, some by reason. Some says that it consists in life of pleasure. This is the view of the masses. Some says it is the life of honor, which is this is the view of a statesman. And some says it consists in virtue, and this is the view of the wise. Let's proceed to the virtue of the golden mean. According to Aristotle, virtue is defined as a disposition, which is, he said that virtue is something we have to develop. For instance, we are not born with courage, so you develop this by disposing yourself, by doing courageous acts. The golden mean. This is the golden mean eudaimonia. As you can see, the golden mean, this is a balance point. As you can see, one must find the right balance between cowardice and the recklessness, that is a courage. So, golden mean and eudaimonia. Golden mean does not entail a denial of emotions. As you can see, the reason, this is a phronesis, which is a wisdom. Rather, what is at issue is how and to what extent reason permits the expression of emotions, which is the emotions. This is a courage. Aristotle developed Plato's three-part teaching of the soul, that are the reason, emotions, and the appetites, by attributing virtues to each feature, which is the appetite is the temperature, which is our self-control. Deliberation and choice. There are two kinds of reasoning, which is the theoretical and the practical. Theoretical, it gives us knowledge of fixed principles of philosophical wisdom, and the practical, it gives us a rational guide to our moral action under the particularly circumstances in which we find ourselves. Voluntary acts and involuntary acts. This is the principal distinction. Involuntary acts, a person is not responsible of his action they are. And the voluntary acts are those which a person is responsible for his actions, because none of the qualities of involuntary act is force. So, balikan natin yung happiness. Aristotle dismisses some answers that others supply to the question, what is happiness? The masses says that the life of pleasure is happiness, but Aristotle contends that this is a vulgar and not fitting of a human being. Politicians says happiness is in honor, but Aristotle points out that requires other people to honor you. Surely, someone could believe well without others honoring them. There are three lives, which is the life of merely survival, which is the vegetative life. This cannot be the characteristic life of a person, because even plants do this, so there must be more to life for us. The second one is the life of pleasure, which is the animal life. This cannot be the characteristic life of a person, because even animals do this, so there must be more to life for us. And the last, the life of virtue and reflection. This is the best life for a person, which is since only human beings can live the life of virtue and reflection. This is uses our faculty of reason. This is the characteristic function of human life. Virtue and prudence. We have seen previous moral theories sweep prudence aside in favor of what morality demands. Aristotle argues that the best life for a person, the most prudent life, just is the life of virtue. So what morality requires in a fact that best life? Desire and character traits. Desires are but one part of what we call character. A character trait is a stable disposition to act a certain way. In certain circumstances, generous person is disposed to give when they see need. Desires and character traits. One example of contemporary struggles to modify desires are struggles with addictions or other called bad habits. Other approach to these issues is strongly reminiscent of Aristotle's approach to ethics in general. A person might decide to quit smoke because life is longer and more pleasant without smoking. The virtues. There seem to be as many virtues as there are positive ways to describe character, but some of the virtues are as follows. So there are two categories of virtue, which is the intellectual virtues and the moral virtues. Intellectual virtues are virtues of the mind, such as the ability to understand reason and make sound judgment. Intellectual virtues may be taught like logic and mathematics by teachers. And the moral virtues, not innate, rather they are acquired through repetition and practice, like learning and a music instrument. It is through the practice and the doing that one becomes a type of person. Over a period of time, virtues become second nature. So, example of intellectual virtues is knowledge. Good thinkers often know a lot. At a minimum, they aren't ignorant. They require a practice of qualities like intellectual carefulness, perseverance, honesty, humility, and attentiveness, and trueness. These are the intellectual virtues. So, these are examples of moral virtues. These are honesty, courage, compassion, generosity, integrity, fairness, self-control, and prudence. So this is the virtue summary. Habit of character involving both feeling and action. Seeks the mean between excess and deficiency. Promotes human flourishing. Eudaimonia and Greek, intellectual and moral. So let's proceed. Phronesis or practical wisdom. A virtue of our rational selves. It means judgment or prudence. It is applied to our irrational appetites and desires to make them good. So this is Aristotle's argument. Our emotions and desires are irrational and need to be controlled by reason. In order to control them, we need to apply the moral virtue of practical wisdom. We need to find the midpoint or mean between two vices. So this is Phronesis builds character. Virtue is concerned with emotions and actions. So this is the Aristotle's concept of life and death. Yan. So in other words, we build character through experience of life. As you can see, the blue line goes round in circles as we reflect on our choices. We also learn by emulation, following our heroes, and education being taught. Aristotle's Nicomachean ethic, the good, what all things aim at. We study ethics not merely to know, but to attain the good and to live good lives. Thank you.